I'm Jim Blum, and this is FolkAlley. John McEuen joins us. He has a career which spans decades, not that we're going to state exactly how old he is, but you might know him for playing with the Nitty Dirt Band from its inception, I believe.
Well, August 12th, 1966, around 1 o'clock. Actually, 1:15, I think it was.
1:15 it was.
Yeah.
Not that you're counting.
15 minutes more or less.
Did you envision it going this long?
You know, I envisioned me going this long doing something, but as far as the band goes, you don't know when you're 20 years old. I don't know what it's like for you, but I can remember getting phone calls when I was younger. Not me getting calls, but my mother getting a call and taking it in the bedroom and coming out crying and saying, Uncle Tom died, and he was only 65, so young, so young, too young. And I'm going like, too young? I'll never make it that far. And I'm 66 now.
66 now.
And I'm going, too young.
Too
No,
young.
That's not time. I'm just getting going.
Now, when you got started with the Dirt Band, were you aware of the categories that were being thrown around? The folk rock, the country rock, the bluegrass tinged folk rock. Were you aware of any of that? Or?
The only one that was around that I'm aware of was folk rock, and that was thanks to the Byrds doing folk music like Turn Turn and Tambourine Man, and with electric bass and drums. Country rock hadn't really emerged yet, you know, and I think that the Dirt Band often doesn't get credit for being one of the people that put country sounding music with a backbeat and halftime and against the straight time. But
and whose idea was that?
I don't know. I mean, it just seemed right. Like some of Shelley's blues, which started off with a banjo. But the drums were halftime drums against that. I think that was Jeff's idea, or maybe Jimmy. It just sounded right. Otherwise, it would have sounded like, you know, tell me. It would have been boring, I think.
But from the early days, were you doing that, or did you just start off doing rock and roll and that drifted
The Dirt
in?
Band started off doing jug band music and folky rock music. Things like we did a lot of early Jackson Browne songs, because Jackson was a friend and hanging around. And
wasn't he sort of in the band at the beginning?
He did 2 shows with the band, and then one time we were both playing, and that was a night that I think was his last show. He did Truthful Parson Brown, one of his songs, but he knew early on that he wanted to. I mean, it wasn't like there was a band. There wasn't even a publicity shot until a few months later. By August, we had settled on a lineup that ended up making the first album that came out the following February, 1967, February 7.
I want to jump ahead a few years to a monumental release, Will the Circle Be Unbroken, which was released in 1972, I believe, and
Right.
This is the 40th anniversary
Yes.
of that album. You were very popular at that time, and looking back on it, bringing those great country artists who were around and really in their prime at the time, Earl Scruggs and Doc Watson and Mother Maybelle Carter, Merle Travis, they're all gone now. How does it feel looking back on that, knowing what you brought to a lot of young people for the first time?
Well, it was a strange enterprise. The Dirt Band had the strength of having 3 hit records in the top 20, House at Pooh Corners, Shelley's Blues, and Mr. Bojangles. And that was when Earl Scruggs came to see us one night. I'm forever proud of the fact that when I asked him why he came to see us, he said to me, I wanted to meet the boy that played Randy Lynn Ragg the way I intended to. Oh. And it was like, I can still remember that like it was a couple weeks ago, you know. But
sure.
He was a nice guy. But it was a year later that I asked him if he'd record with the band, and he said yes, I'd be proud to. And then Doc Watson a week after that. It all came together really quick. And if Jeff hadn't picked the right songs to record that led up to that, so that the kids of those people could play the parents the music of this new band that was on the charts, but they were playing folk music, you know what it was like then. If you heard Foggy Mountain Breakdown on the radio, bluegrass is going to be big this year. You know, every time something happened with a banjo or a mandolin or fiddle on pop radio, bluegrass is going to be big this year. I heard that for like 30 years, it seemed like. And it never stuck. But back in 71, these people, they were at the peak, but they'd been cast aside by Nashville. As a matter of fact, after our interview with Roy Acuff prior to recording, the Nashville Tennessean got wind that we were in town to record with Acuff and Travis and Maybelle. And they said in the newspaper in Nashville the week before the recording, the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band is in town to record, which was big news for Nashville. A West Coast group that has records on pop radio is coming to Nashville to record. And their comment was, why are they recording with a bunch of old dinosaurs? You know, it's like, wouldn't old dinosaurs, though they didn't see it. They didn't, as a matter of fact, I told the story, I've told the story before about seeing Maybelle Carter for the first time at the Grand Ole Opry before the Dirt Band started. My brother and I made our way to Nashville. And I looked in the back window just in time to see Lester Flatt introduce Maybelle. Bring out, Earl, let's bring out Mama Maybelle Carter to the Wildwood Flower. And Earl told me, let's skip ahead to a few years after the Circle album, and I'm talking to Earl about that incident. And he goes, yeah, we did this album with Maybelle called The Tribute to the Carter Family because the only job she could get in Nashville in the previous 5 years was as a nurse at Nashville General Hospital. She couldn't get a music job, a record deal.
Wow.
And I thought Maybelle was just being nice. When I took her when Circle album first turned gold, it took a couple years, I took a copy of the gold record out to her place to give to her. And she said, well, I never thought that many people even heard those old songs. She actually meant that.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't realize that every guitar player of the era learned Wildwood Flower, you know, just like they would learn a Venture song or something.
And the way the album was recorded with very casual in-studio commentary left there for the first time, it sort of opened not the front door but the back door for people to really jump in and get to know you guys. Was that thought of
to
it?
know them was what was important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my brother produced that album, and he and I put things together that we made sure happened. Like there was a moment when we knew Merle Travis was going to meet Doc Watson for the first time. And you can hear on the album when Doc and Merle start talking, you can hear me coming in the way going, excuse me, Merle, hang on a second, because I have to push the microphone over in front of him. You know, he was like, he's way over here, like, yeah, Doc. I'm going, hang on, Merle, just a minute. Yeah, go ahead. Don't worry about the mic. I just had to put it there. Well, Doc, I've always wanted to meet, so you can get it on the tape.
Yeah.
Because it was too far away. And we knew that was important. It was important to us. We didn't know it was going to be so important to others. But any word that Maybelle Carter would say would be important. And Earl, I mean, I used to play you remember an album called Flatt and Scruggs at Carnegie Hall?
Sure.
Well, there's a song on there in D tuning called Mama Blues, and the banjo's going, you know, let's see, I'm trying to think of, oh, he said, and Earl's going, yes, what is it, son? Well, don't say mama. You know, he's doing that.
Yeah.
You know, what do you want? You want a drink of water? Don't say say yes, sir. And I would play that over and over just to hear him talk.
Yeah.
And Bill knew that the talking was important. That's why he ran a tape recorder the whole time. A separate machine was running all the time.
Just to catch
at
that.
7.5. The rest of the album was recorded at 30 inches per second on 2-track tape.
Wow. Many takes?
Not usually. Usually, as Acuff says on the album, my policy in the studio is get it right the first time and to hell with the rest of them, because you lose a little something. And you do. You don't go to the dentist office and have him go, well, let me go see if I can get the right tooth out, or let me see if I can, the pilot doesn't come on and say, yeah, we're going to be in Pittsburgh, and oh no, it's Philadelphia. Everybody else that does stuff has to know what they're doing usually. So why record a song that you don't know, or that you don't think is going to go down right?
Was it hard to get Capitol Records to go along with all this?
It wasn't Capitol at the time. It was Liberty. And the man in charge was a guy named Mike Stewart. My brother and I went in and had a meeting with Mike because we had, at that point, the band didn't know about it yet, but it wasn't like a secret. It just wasn't something that was happening. I asked Earl if he'd record. 10 days later, maybe Doc, and then Bill and I talked. Merle Travis, and Earl said he could maybe get Maybelle, and Louise, his wife, helped. And so we're about 3.5 weeks into it. We had to have a meeting with the record company to see if they'd put up the money. And we did our pitch, and the president of the label said, I don't know if I'm going to sell 10 of these.
Wow.
But you guys, I don't know, you're so much into it. Okay, I'll put up the money. He put up, gave us a budget of $22,000. And that's less than a Madonna video food budget. You know? So for 22 G's in 1971, it paid for studio time, musicians, hotels, food, tape, everything.
Wow.
And we recorded for 6 days, usually not more than 4 or 5 hours throughout the day, maybe 3 hours between 11 and 2, and then hanging out, and then somebody would show up. No overdubs, because everything was 2-track. I mean, once you got a song laid down 2-track, you were done. No mixing, no generation loss, none of the problems of mixing and generation loss and things of that nature that can happen with multi-track.
Then there was Circle 2 and Circle 3, also good recordings.
Whoops. Yeah, Circle 2 came about in 1989, almost 20 years later. And then Circle 3 in 2003. And I think Circle 3 was was more like the first one. It was a wonderful combination of people. The difference was, as many of the people on Circle 3 hadn't even started when the first Circle album was done. You know, and they were influenced by it. Allison and Iris DeMint and several of the people.
Now you are recognized primarily as a banjo player, though those that get to know you play many instruments. Today you have the guitar with you, and I want to get you to play something. First, can you tell us a bit about how as a banjo player, how it influences how you play the 6-string?
Well, I started playing the banjo because of Doug Dillard, and it was awful bluegrassy. But then I got into frailing and playing some classical tunes because it was nice to play things that other people weren't playing. And when the guitar came around, it's like everybody plays a guitar. How could I do any? I'm not going to be a guitar player of like, oh wow, listen to this guy. I knew I couldn't be that, so I tried to find things that I liked open tunings a lot. And then I'd look at it like, is the camera hitting this right here? Well, that chord in this open tuning, that's just like the G chord on the banjo. The middle 4 strings right here are just like the 4 strings, lower 4 strings on the banjo. In other words, Foggy Mountain Breakdown. Let's see. I can't do it with this. That's if I'm kind of messing up, you know. I'm messing around. So I can relate to the guitar in D tuning. And then this is like the first string is like the 5th string. And here's a drone. So you can take a banjo pattern that is like, on the banjo it might go, double thumbing is called. Change the emphasis and go. So when the Dirt Band recorded Long Hard Road, which was our first #1 song, 17 years into the group, it started off with the guitar, and I'm basically playing banjo. There's that, way back in my memory, there's a scene that I recall. And all these little licks. It's just like, it's so easy.
Easy
I don't
for
want to
you,
get
sir.
caught. I shouldn't be showing anybody how easy this is. But like you could take a song like John Henry. Come on, John. Let's change it a little bit. That's like half banjo playing and half just drony guitar.
I recognize that same tuning from some of the songs that were on Lady's Choice, I believe.
Yeah, on the Acoustic Traveler album that I did. Let's see. And then... So it's like, this is a harder guitar. It's a stage guitar more than I use a Martin that I have. Which is, anyway, it's more like you can get different sounds out of it than just playing in regular tuning. So it's and when you play your own stuff in your own tuning, if you mess up, you just rewrote it. And it's good for power chords.
Today you have released an album with your two sons. What was it like being in the studio with them, and did you have to give them much guidance, or did you follow their lead?
Well, the deal I made with them, I says, look, each of us need to pick 3 songs, and the other 2 will go along with whatever that guy picks. We'll support each other, and then we have to vote on 3 that we can agree on, that we will also work with the same intensity. And that worked. There were some interesting moments, like one time...
Sure you want to tell it?
Yeah, I'm thinking, well, I don't care. One time, Nathan's the younger one. Jonathan's 35. He's Dave Mason's favorite guitar player, both acoustic and electric, and Dave uses him a lot. Jonathan played all the lead on Dave's album, 26 Letters, 12 Notes, and sang harmony, and Dave recorded one of his songs. This is a mentorship that Jonathan went after years ago. He moved to Ojai, California, so he could meet Dave Mason. It took him 2 years to make it happen. And then Dave wanted him to play banjo on his song because he thought he was the John McEuen banjo player because his name's Jonathan.
I thought he was you.
He put it together when he showed up at the studio.
And he could figure out.
And then he called me, and I ended up playing on it. But they have known each other, and he's gone out and played with them a lot and recorded. But Jonathan's been working at it since he is on the road. When he was 15, 16, he was taking guys twice as old as him on the road to go play 3 weeks in Deadwood at a bar and doing 3 sets a night, or playing all over Colorado and just working at it. And he's made a ton of recordings. He had an album with his cousin, Jamie Hanna, who was Jeff Hanna in the Dirt Band, his son. Hannah McEuen was on MCA. It was doing really good, and they got dropped along with a bunch of people. My point is, Jonathan had gone through a lot of more ground level stuff than Nathan. He'd worked with several companies. And we're in the studio working on one song, and I said, look, on this one I think we should start this way and do that, and Nathan's going, well, why do we have to do it that way? I said, well, I think it'll be a good way to start it. Well, I don't think so. Well, no, Nathan, let's just try it. I mean, it's not like it's coming out tomorrow. We just got to try it. Well, why should we do it? And Jonathan says, Nathan, he's the one with the platinum records on the wall. You're not. Maybe you should listen. Jonathan, and then he told me later, he goes, Dad, I wouldn't have said that 10 years ago. But I've learned a lot in the last 10. And that was not a bad moment because we got through it and everything went fine. But in general, it was really fun, the whole thing. I told Jonathan, I said, I want all your guitar solos to be first take. And they were.
Wow.
If you can't go in there and play the guitar on a song and you got to fumble around with it, then you don't know it. And you come back, and if my side of being producer will be to say, are you ready for a guitar solo? Okay, go do it. And if you're screwing up, you're not ready. And you listen to that album, and that electric, oh, I want to break the kid's hands, because he just goes in and nailed some really great Strat type of stuff, Mark Knopfler type of thing. And then the acoustic, and leader of the band, first take on the vocal. Okay, there was a moment when I wanted them to redo the harmony vocals on leader of the band because they just weren't tight enough. They were good, but there was two guys singing. That's different than parts that work. Go redo the backgrounds. And Nathan shows up a week later and says, well, here they are. And I did a mix on it. And he said, well, Jonathan redid the first verse lead, and you didn't use that. I says, yeah, I know. Well, he sang it beautiful. I says, yeah, but the original that he did live sounded like he was singing to me. And Jonathan goes, yeah, I was, because I was sitting this far away from him. And I have the mandolin, and he's singing right, And Nathan's going, well, the redo, he sounds like Vince Gill. It's just, I says, yeah, and that's why we don't use it. Well, why is that? I said, because there already is a Vince Gill. This one, the original, sounds like Jonathan.
Well, now that you have your guitar with you, do you actually have something you'd like to play for us?
Let's see. Yeah, okay. How about something that I used in a film score for Tommy Lee Jones? That was fun. I get a call one day. This is Tommy Lee Jones. I understand you want to do the music for my movie. I go, yeah, who is this? Is this Merle? Is this Bob? It was Tommy Lee Jones. I couldn't believe it. And I says, well, I'm kind of shocked I'm talking to Tommy Lee Jones. Okay, get over it now. And he'd been told what I do, and he wanted acoustic and weird music for his film called The Good Old Boys. It takes place in 1906 Texas. He's playing the part. He's directing, wrote the script. It was a Turner project. And he's playing the part of Huey Calloway, a burnout old cowboy in 1906 that's going home. Hadn't been home in 8-10 years. Comes home on a Sunday afternoon. And Tommy Lee liked his guitar in detuning. And I started playing some things, and he goes, yeah, that's what I want. So picture a dusty old cowboy coming into town on a Sunday afternoon.
John McEuen, it's been a thrill to have you.
Thank you.
I have one more question for you.
Anything.
Looking back on it, on all those years you've been playing, you're nearly 70 now.
Oh my God, it's so weird to hear that. Oh.
Hate to be the first one to tell
I'm
you.
66.
66, all right. You're barely over 65. How's that? Does that sound better? Looking back on it, anything you would have done differently?
I would have been at the birth of my first son instead of being on the road playing in Aspen and thinking that that was so important to not miss one of 5 shows at a club. And when the birth was happening in Denver, I could have just, I thought it was going to be cool to get a call. It's a boy, it's a girl, whatever it was. And the way I was raised, that didn't seem to be out of place, but I wish I would have been there.
Do you think you put other things behind music?
Behind music?
Well, in other words, you just stated an
I
example.
gave it too much.
Did music take, was it too much in first place compared to your...
I've worried about that. I have 6 kids, and often I say things like when Nathan, the one on this album, is 31 now, when I said to him at 17, I'm sorry you're having another birthday on the road, because I was a single dad for 10 years, raising 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, as they were growing up.
Wow.
Because when I got divorced from their mom, Nathan was 8. So by the time he got to be 17, I said, I'm sorry you're having another birthday on the road. He goes, Dad, most of my friends haven't left the state. I'm 17, and I've been in 25 state capitals. It's fine.
That must have meant a lot.
It did. It meant an awful lot. And my daughter would say, don't you remember the ice rink you made for me? Don't you remember the dollhouse you built for me? I always treated my kids. The thing was, I gave them all the time when I was home, but it never felt like I was there enough. But they're happy. They're fine.
Well, John McEuen, you've made a lot of people very happy over the course of their lives. Thank you so much for joining FolkAlley today.
Hey, thank you, and really appreciate the airplay. And I hope people get the word of the album with my sons. I think it's one of the coolest recordings that I've done in years. We all got to do exactly what we wanted, and we just hope people like it, like they have been. Spread the word.